6 years ago, I was in a tea house in Chengdu with a friend of mine and a friend of hers, and they were having a dispute about something. I asked them what it was about, and she told me that they were arguing about the merits or otherwise of the Great Firewall of China, the internet censorship in China. And she was arguing in favour of it, and her friend was arguing against it. And I didn't hear the content of the argument, but I said, yeah, I think I support your friend, actually. Seems to me that China is in such a kind of strong position and a country that's sure of itself. I don't understand why they would behave like that. It seems like it's a sign of weakness of a country that doesn't seem weak. Chinese people can travel overseas and they can see the internet, they can see other things. And so it seems sort of pointless blocking it off from here. And I expect that in the fullness of time, when they're feeling less insecure, that will probably be released. I was back in China a couple of months ago and I saw my friend again. And I said, you remember that issue that you were having with your friend? And I said, I supported your friend's argument. I'm not sure that I do anymore, to be honest. And I think the reason for that is that what has happened to all the stuff outside that big firewall ever since, that the legacy media has increasingly been owned and controlled by right-wing imperialist interests. It used to be Rupert Murdoch, it still is, but that concentration and the destruction of independent voices in the media has proceeded apace. And so has social media. Social media has become far, far more controlled. I mean, the big thing was Musk buying Twitter. But Facebook's become way, way more controlled. And I think the thing that really brought that home to people was the genocide in Gaza. The social media formula is they know what you want. They know more about you than you do about yourself. And they give you what you want. That's the business model, right? Like, they know I'm an Arsenal supporter. They never try to convince me to be a Chelsea supporter. They just give me what I want. Except when it came to Gaza. On Gaza, every single platform, I was getting Zionist propaganda. Some of it paid, some of it suggested. They know that I support a free Palestine, but they're still feeding me the Zionist propaganda, except on TikTok. TikTok was the only one that wasn't feeding me the Zionist propaganda. And that was a problem for the Americans. And they've been very explicit about it. Just a month or so ago, Hillary Clinton did that extraordinary speech where she bemoaned the fact that people were being brainwashed by TikTok. That is, that somehow people were getting through the right-wing Zionist control of social media, and there was a little glimmer on TikTok and people were finding out about it, and it was an issue. And it was an issue. It was a huge issue. It was a huge issue. And so there was support from all across the political spectrum, and the Democrats and the Republicans, to do something about TikTok. What do we do about TikTok? Because TikTok was a major ingredient, apart from the fact that the genocide was being live streamed on TV, and we had the White House presses where they were trying to kind of gaslight the whole world and tell everybody that what we saw wasn't actually what we saw. But TikTok was the chink in the armor, and it was a big priority for them. So there was that ban on TikTok, and then there was a ridiculous own goal where Xiaohongshu appeared as the alternative to TikTok, and all these American, what they call TikTok refugees, went across to Xiaohongshu, Little Red Book, the Chinese social media network. And suddenly there were Chinese and American people kind of communicating with each other directly, and quite a few myths were busted in that human interaction. But the real problem was that TikTok was undermining the agreed propaganda from the media that is all controlled by far-right Zionist interests. And so at the meeting on the fringes of the APEC meeting, the meeting between President Trump and President Xi late last year, it was agreed that TikTok, the TikTok content would be sold to the Americans, not the algorithm. They're only going to be leasing the algorithm; they're not owning it, but they get to decide the content. And guess what? Yesterday, it all kicked in, and people who had content producers on TikTok are just disappearing. They are going to so-called depoliticize the whole platform to prevent any kind of political discourse at all, to just reduce it to dance moves and cookery and movies and so on. Of course, depoliticizing it, so-called, is actually politicizing it, because it's removing any TikTok's ability to be any kind of open, critical space for these issues to be addressed. So now the little chink in the armor, the little crack in the dike has been plugged, and it's wall-to-wall far-right Zionist control of all global media now. A few little things, I shouldn't be too disparaging of places like Blue Sky, but they're minor players considering, you know, all these other things. So to get back to my point about the censorship in China, the reason I changed my mind was I thought, well, people in China know they're living behind a firewall. They know they're not seeing everything. They know it's all kind of controlled. The difference is that people in the West kind of don't. Unless you've got a political analysis of what's going on, you just see what's there and that just gets normalized and things just disappear, and you don't realize that you're being fed a highly politicized algorithm that is serving a particular political ideology. And so consumers of Western legacy media and social media don't realize that we're all living behind a firewall as well. We're living behind a firewall controlled by billionaire corporate interests. Chinese people are living behind a firewall controlled by the Chinese government. Chinese government, for whatever, better or worse or whatever, its job is to do what it thinks is in the best interests of Chinese people. The people who control the firewall outside of China, the one we live behind, aren't like that at all. They are promoting their own agendas at the expense of other people. So would China benefit from opening all that up and having Chinese people being exposed to what then they might also think as, well, this is everything as well, or not? I'm not convinced. I don't know the answer to that, but it's become a lot more complicated than my view 6 or 7 years ago, that why would China have that firewall up? Because the height and the strength and the impregnability and the power of the firewall we're living behind has become a lot more powerful.